Welcome to David's Stories. Today we follow Roger Baker, a devoted father betrayed on Christmas Day after waiting 13 hours at the airport. He uncovers his daughter's greed for inheritance, severs ties, and reclaims his life in freedom. Subscribe and hit the bell for weekly videos, uncovering raw truths. Share your thoughts below. Let's start the stories. The wheels kissed the runway at 2:47 p.m. on Christmas Day, and the jolt that ran through the fuselage felt like a promise. Denver International. My old hunting ground welcomed me with the familiar bite of high-altitude air and the muffled roar of jet engines. I had flown in from a city that no longer felt like home, carrying 6 gift bags and a heart heavier than the altitude should allow. I am Roger Baker, 62, widowed, newly liquid, after selling the auto parts empire I built with grease under my nails and Margaret's laughter in my ears. The sale had closed 3 weeks ago, 12 locations, 30 years, $2.8 million wired into accounts. I still didn't know how to read without her hand on my shoulder. Tonight I would hand my daughter the future in velvet boxes and sealed envelopes. Tonight I believed the past would finally be forgiven. The terminal unfolded like a memory I hadn't visited in decades. Families collided in slow-motion, joy toddlers launched into grandfather's arms. Wives pressed faces into husbands' coats. Teenagers pretended not to cry. I shifted the weight of the bags, burgundy for Victoria, forest green for Martin, red and gold for Emma, and felt the emerald necklace box press against my ribs like a second heartbeat. 3 generations of Baker women had worn those stones. Tonight the 4th would claim them. I dialed Victoria the moment the seatbelt sign blinked off. "Dad." Her voice came flat, distracted the way it did when she was checking emails during our video calls. "Sweetheart, I'm here. Gate B32. Just like we planned." A pause. The kind that stretches just long enough to bruise. "Oh, right. We're running late. Christmas chaos, you know. Wait at the exit doors. We'll be there soon." Soon. The word should have sparkled. Instead, it landed like a coin dropped on concrete. I told myself not to overthink. Sarah and I had once circled the pickup loop 3 times rather than let a guest wait. Victoria was a mother now, schedules fractured. I wheeled my suitcase past the baggage carousels, past the plastic mistletoe, and the brass quartet playing Silent Night off-key. Each step echoed with the soft rustle of tissue paper and the heavier clink of certified checks in my coat pocket. 50,000 for Victoria, 50,000 for Martin, 75,000 for Emma's education. 175,000 reasons to believe in redemption. Outside snow fell in perfect, weightless silence. The pickup lanes glittered under sodium lights that hadn't yet decided it was afternoon. I claimed a spot beside the automatic doors, gift bags arranged like bright sentries around my boots. A young father hurried past, car seat in one hand, suitcase in the other, his wife laughing about cranberry sauce. Their joy felt contagious until I realized it wasn't meant for me. My phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. "Still running late. Be patient, be patient." Not sorry, not can't wait to see you. Just 2 words that tasted like metal. I stared at the screen until the pixels blurred. Around me, strangers streamed toward waiting cars, doors slamming, engines, purring tires, crunching slush. My reflection in the glass doors looked older than the man who had boarded the plane in Phoenix. I tried Martin. Straight to voicemail. The automatic doors whooshed open and closed, exhaling December each time. I counted the cycles, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. By the 15th, the cold had found the gap between my collar and scarf. I shifted the burgundy bag higher on my shoulder. The ribbon cut into my palm like a reminder. At 3:15 p.m., I moved to the cushioned chairs near the windows. Better view, worse circulation. A security guard nodded. I nodded back, the universal language of men who have nowhere else to be. I opened Victoria's bag and touched the velvet box. The emeralds inside had survived 2 world wars. My mother's wedding, Sarah's cancer. They were supposed to survive this reunion too. Another text never came. I began to inventory the bags the way I once inventoried spark plugs. Burgundy necklace, $50,000 check. Handwritten letter I'd revised 6 times. Forest green cashmere scarf from the boutique Sarah loved. Martin's check, a vintage keychain shaped like a '57 Chevy inside joke from when he still laughed at my stories. Red and gold American Girl doll with Emma's exact curly hair, $75,000 education fund, a locket engraved, "To the moon and back." The doll's plastic eyes stared up at me unblinking. By 3:45 the terminal had thinned. The brass quartet packed up. A janitor swept glitter into a dustpan. I stood stretched, sat again. My lower back protested like an old suspension system. I dialed Victoria a 3rd time. Voicemail, 4th time, same. I started a game every time the doors opened. I imagined it was them. A silver SUV, too new. A red minivan, wrong license plate. A black sedan driver, alone. Each false alarm carved a tiny notch in my optimism. At 4:12 p.m., the sky outside turned the color of tarnished nickel. Snow thickened, swirling under the lamps like secrets trying to escape. I pulled out the envelopes and fanned them across my lap. Bank of Colorado letterhead crisp seals my signature in the bottom right corner. I had practiced that signature on napkins for weeks, making sure it looked generous but not desperate. A memory surfaced, uninvited Victoria, at 7, standing on a chair beside me in the garage, handing me wrenches while I rebuilt a carburetor. When I grow up, she'd said, I'm going to have a job where I never get dirty. I had laughed and promised her the world. Tonight I was delivering it in installments. I texted, at exit doors near door 507 East. Snow's picking up. Let me know ETA. 3 dots appeared. Vanished, appeared again. Then nothing. The game evolved. Now I timed the silence between my heartbeat and the doors. 1 minute to 5. At 4:30 p.m., I relocated to the coffee shop near Gate B15. The barista wore a Santa hat 2 sizes too big. She wished me Merry Christmas with the efficiency of someone who had said it 400 times. I ordered black coffee and a turkey sandwich I didn't want. The gift bags took up 2 chairs like colorful hostages. While I waited for the sandwich, I opened the burgundy bag again. The letter inside began, My dearest Victoria, these emeralds have waited 30 years for your neck. I had written it at 2 a.m. 3 nights ago, tears blurring the ink. I folded it shut before the words could mock me. 05 p.m. The coffee cooled. I called again, call 678. Each ring felt like a nail. Voicemail greetings grew shorter, as if Victoria's phone itself was tired of me. I left messages that started calm and ended ragged. Sweetheart, just let me know you're safe. Emma? Okay, I'm still here. It's cold. At 5:27 p.m., the overhead lights dimmed to evening mode. The airport transformed into a hive of delayed flights and desperate parents. I watched a woman my age hug her son so fiercely his luggage tipped. He laughed into her hair. My chest ached with a specific gravity I couldn't name. I moved again, this time to the seating area near the information desk, closer to the heaters. My shoes, Italian leather I'd bought to impress Martin, pinched. The emerald box had left a rectangular bruise over my heart. I opened the forest green bag and ran my thumb across the scarf's monogram, M.A.B. Martin Alexander Baker. I had chosen the thread color to match his eyes. Another memory, Martin's first Christmas with us, nervous in a borrowed tie, asking if I needed help hanging lights. I had handed him the staple gun like a torch. Tonight he couldn't spare 15 minutes to cross the city. 0 p.m. exactly. The sandwich sat untouched. I counted the gift bags again, 6, always 6, and realized I had begun to hate their brightness. They looked like evidence in a crime I hadn't committed yet. I dialed Victoria for the 12th time. The phone rang twice before she picked up, breathless, irritated. Dad, what is it now? I've been waiting 4 hours. Just 15 more minutes maximum. And don't call a taxi. Click. The prohibition against the taxi lodged in my throat like a fishbone. If they were stuck in traffic, why forbid the obvious solution? If Emma was sick, why not say so? The questions multiplied, each one darker than the last. I gathered the bags and walked to the cafeteria near Terminal A. The smell of reheated lasagna and despair. I claimed a table by the window, arranged the bags like a fortress, and ordered tomato soup I wouldn't taste. Steam fogged my glasses. In the condensation I drew a tiny heart, then wiped it away. 4:45 p.m. Outside, the snow had become a living thing, erasing tire tracks as soon as they appeared. I watched a family of 5 pile into a Suburban, their breath fogging the windows. The father caught my eye and waved an apology for taking the last spot near the door, maybe. I waved back, a reflex from a lifetime of pretending everything was fine. I opened the red and gold bag. The doll's curls were exactly Emma's shade. I had stood in the store for 40 minutes while the clerk matched the yarn to a photo on my phone. The locket inside held a picture of Sarah holding newborn Emma. I snapped it shut before the image could undo me. 15 p.m. The cafeteria lights flickered. A voice over the PA announced the last flight to Phoenix was boarding. My flight home wasn't until the 27th. I had booked an open return, certain I'd want to stay. Now the idea of sleeping in Victoria's guest room felt like volunteering for a hostage video. I tried Martin again, call 20. Voicemail. Victoria, call 21. Same. The numbers began to feel ritualistic, like rosary beads for a faith I was losing. At 7:30, the coffee shop closed. Chairs stacked, lights dimmed. I relocated to a bench near the restrooms, the only place still warm. My reflection in the polished floor looked like a ghost carrying presents. I counted the gift bags for the 10th time. Still 6, always 6. I pulled out the envelopes and laid them on my lap like tarot cards. The seals gleamed under fluorescent light. I imagined Victoria's face when she saw the amounts, eyes widening the way they had at 7 when the bicycle appeared under the tree. I imagined Martin shaking my hand with new respect. I imagined Emma's future unfolding in ivy-covered buildings I would never afford without the sale. 0 p.m. The airport had entered its night shift. Custodians moved like shadows. Travelers slept across chairs. I stood stamped, feeling back into my feet, and walked to the exit doors again. The snow outside was a white curtain. No headlights cut through it. No Victoria. I dialed call 35. My thumb hesitated over the green button, then pressed. Voicemail. I didn't leave a message this time. The silence on the other end felt deliberate, curated. Something inside me shifted, not broke, but rearranged. The man who had boarded the plane in Phoenix had believed in second chances. The man standing here now began to suspect the game was rigged. I looked at the gift bags, bright against the institutional gray of the floor. They suddenly seemed obscene, thousands of dollars of hope, wrapped in tissue and ribbon, waiting for people who had forgotten I existed. I zipped my coat, adjusted the strap of the heaviest bag, and walked toward the taxi stand. The automatic doors opened one last time, exhaling me into the storm. Snowflakes melted on my lashes. Behind me, the terminal lights flickered like a heartbeat slowing down. I didn't know it yet, but the mystery had already begun. The envelopes in my pocket were no longer gifts. They were evidence. The emerald necklace was no longer an heirloom. It was a key. And the daughter I had flown across the country to embrace had just locked the door from the inside. The taxi idled at the curb, engine humming like a question. I loaded the bags into the trunk, each one heavier than the last. The driver met my eyes in the rearview mirror. "Rough day?" he asked. "You have no idea," I said. As we pulled away, the airport shrank in the side mirror, a bright, indifferent star. I touched the envelopes through my coat and felt the first stirrings of a power I hadn't known I possessed. The night was young. The betrayal was just beginning. And somewhere in the city, my daughter was about to learn that some gifts come with strings sharp enough to cut. The taxi's tires hissed over slush as we merged onto Peña Boulevard, but my mind was still trapped inside the terminal, replaying the last 8 hours like a security camera loop. The driver, his nameplate read. James glanced at me in the mirror. "Christmas visit," he asked. "Something like that?" I said the words tasting like rust. He nodded, sensing the weight, and let the silence ride with us. Snow blurred the windshield into watercolor streaks. I pressed my palm against the window. The glass was cold enough to burn. In the reflection, the gift bags glowed like radioactive relics in the back seat. I should have been in Victoria's kitchen by now, watching Emma tear into the red and gold bag, while Martin poured eggnog and Victoria laughed at one of my old garage stories. Instead, I was hurtling toward a house I'd helped buy, carrying $175 to $1,000 in unopened promises, and a heart that had begun to suspect the worst. James tried again. "Family reunion." "My daughter," I said. "Victoria. And her husband Martin. Granddaughter Emma. They'll be thrilled to see you." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe anyone. The envelopes shifted in my coat pocket, 3 crisp rectangles of possibility. I had rehearsed the moment 100 times. Victoria's gasp when she saw the emerald necklace, Martin's respectful nod at the $50,000 check, Emma's squeal over the doll. I had even imagined the toast to family, to legacy, to second chances. But the toast was curdling. At 9:45 p.m., we passed a subdivision where every lawn blazed with Christmas lights. Mechanical reindeer nodded in sync. Inflatable Santas swayed like drunk sentries. Behind those windows, strangers were living the evening I had flown across the country to claim. I felt the first real stab of envy, sharp, childish, undeniable. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, "Mr. Baker. This is Denver cab, ETA, 12 minutes to Cherry Hills Village." I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. 12 minutes. After 8 hours of soon 12 minutes felt like mercy. James caught my eye. "Almost there." I nodded, but my stomach notched. The prohibition against the taxi still gnawed at me. "Don't you dare call a taxi." Why, if they were stuck, why not let me solve the problem? Unless the problem wasn't logistics. Unless the problem was me. We turned onto Victoria Street at 9:57 p.m. The houses here were newer money. Clean lines, triple garages, landscaping that cost more than my first shop. I had written the $20,000 check for the down payment without hesitation. Let them start fresh. I'd told Sarah's photograph the night I signed it. They deserve it. James slowed. "Which one?" I pointed to the modern colonial at the end of the cul-de-sac. Golden light spilled from every window, pooling across the snow like melted butter. 2 cars sat in the driveway, Victoria's silver Mercedes and Martin's blue BMW. Both spotless, both clearly functional. James whistled softly. "Looks like a party." Through the living room window, I saw movement figures around a dining table. Wine glasses catching the chandelier's glow. Laughter drifted faintly through the glass. My pulse slowed to a crawl. James pulled in behind the Mercedes. "That'll be $68.50. I handed him $75. "I keep the change." "You sure you're okay?" "You look." "I'm fine." The lie came out automatic, polished by decades of customer service. He helped me unload the gift bags. 6 of them, heavier than sin. As his taillights disappeared, I stood alone on the sidewalk, snowflakes settling on my lashes like tiny white lies. The house looked perfect. Too perfect. The wreath on the door was store-bought, symmetrical, expensive. Nothing like the lopsided pine cone monstrosities Emma and I used to make. I approached the window slowly, boots crunching. Inside, Roy Martin's father, retired. Federal judge, was gesturing with a fork, telling a story that made Lindsay throw her head back in laughter. Martin refilled wine glasses. Victoria leaned against the back of her chair, relaxed, radiant, content. None of them looked like people waiting for a missing father. My legs went numb. I set the heaviest gift bag on the porch railing to steady myself. The emerald box pressed against my ribs like a brand. I had carried it across 3 states through security pat-downs and turbulence, convinced it would bridge 20 years of distance. Now it felt like a noose. The front door opened before I could ring the bell. Victoria stood in the gap, cheeks flushed from wine, eyes wide with something between surprise and panic. "Dad!" Her voice pitched too high. "You're here!" "I waited 13 hours, I said. My voice sounded like someone else's calm, flat, dangerous. "We had a flat tire," she blurted. "On the way to get you." I gestured toward the driveway. 2 cars, both fine. I forgot to call. My phone died and then Martin's car. The lies tumbled out faster than she could polish them. I stepped forward. She had no choice but to move aside. The warmth of the house hit me like a slap. Cinnamon, garlic, roasted meat. The dining room was visible from the entryway. Empty plates, half-eaten pie, 4 place settings, no 5th chair, no indication anyone had been expected. Roy stood. "Roger, we had no idea you were still at the airport." Genuine warmth in his voice, confusion in his eyes. Lindsay rose too, hand over her heart. "You poor thing, you must be exhausted." 35 calls, I said, setting the gift bags down with deliberate care. 35. The room went still. Martin shifted in his chair, unable to meet my gaze. Victoria's smile froze into something plastic. "We were just about to leave to get you," she said. "Weren't we, Martin?" Martin mumbled something about battery issues. His fork clattered against his plate. I looked at the table. 4 wine glasses, 4 dessert plates, 4 lives that had continued without me. Roy frowned. "Victoria said your flight was delayed until tomorrow morning." Silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Victoria's face drained of color. "Tomorrow morning," I repeated. The words tasted like ash. Lindsay moved first. "Roger, you must be starving. Let me warm a plate." She bustled toward the kitchen, maternal instincts overriding the awkwardness. Roy gestured to the empty chair beside him. "Sit. We'll sort this out." I sat. The burgundy gift bag leaned against my leg like a sleeping dog. Victoria launched into nervous chatter about traffic, about Emma's nap schedule, about anything that wasn't the truth. I let her talk. Each word was another brick in the wall I was building between us. Lindsay returned with turkey, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce. The plate looked like a magazine spread. I took a bite. It tasted like cardboard. Roy leaned forward. "So your flight landed on time, 2:47 p.m., I said. "Clear skies." He did the math in his head. 8 hours. 8 hours of silence. Victoria jumped in. "He just got here, Dad." "The car's where I waited at the airport," I said. "Called you 35 times." No one answered. Lindsay's hand flew to her mouth. 8 hours on Christmas Day. Martin stared at his wine glass like it held the answers. Roy's voice hardened. "If you needed a ride, Roger, you should have called us." "I didn't have your numbers memorized," I said. And I kept expecting my daughter to answer. Victoria's laugh cracked like thin ice. "Well, he's here now. That's what matters, right?" Martin nodded without conviction. I set my fork down. "Excuse me, I need the restroom." Lindsay pointed down the hall. "First door on the right." I walked slowly, the carpet muffling my steps. The bathroom door was ajar, but voices from the kitchen stopped me cold. Victoria and Martin hushed, urgent. "I really wish he hadn't shown up tonight," Martin said. "He always embarrasses us in front of your parents," Victoria replied. "Those silly stories about building his business from nothing, like he's some kind of mogul." My hand froze on the door handle. "Your dad just doesn't understand how to behave around people like my parents." Martin continued. "The way he talks, his mannerisms, it's awkward." "I was hoping if we ignored him long enough he'd just go home," Victoria said. "Maybe get the hint that we don't really want him here." The words carved into me like a scalpel. 13 hours. 13 hours of deliberate cruelty designed to make me disappear. Maybe next Christmas we just don't invite him, Martin suggested. Tell him we're going out of town. Perfect, Victoria agreed. Your parents are so sophisticated. Dad means well, but he's just not their type. I gripped the door frame. My reflection in the hallway mirror looked like a stranger, eyes hollow mouth set in a line I didn't recognize. At least the money situation will be settled soon, Victoria said. Once you know the inheritance, then we won't have to pretend anymore. The inheritance. They were waiting for me to die. Something inside me crystallized. The hurt father dissolved. In his place stood a man who had just been handed a loaded gun. I straightened my shoulders, touched the envelopes in my pocket, and walked back toward the kitchen. The gift bags waited like witnesses. Victoria looked up casual, expecting compliance. I heard every word I said. The dish in her hand slipped. Martin caught it before it shattered. Dad. 13 hours. I continued. 35 calls. And you were in here planning my exclusion from future holidays while discussing my death like a line item. Victoria's face went white. You don't understand. We were stressed. 2 working cars in the driveway, I said. Both available to pick up your father who waited in an airport on Christmas Day. Martin cleared his throat. Maybe we didn't express ourselves well. Express yourselves well? My voice carried 24 years of buried disappointment. You laughed about my little auto parts stores. 12 locations, Martin. 30 years of 16-hour days so Victoria could have everything I never did. Victoria tried tears. We love you. You know that. Love, I repeated. The word felt obscene. You told Martin that once I die, you won't have to pretend to care about these awkward family gatherings anymore. The kitchen fell silent except for the refrigerator's hum. Footsteps approached. Roy and Lindsay appeared in the doorway, concern etched on their faces. Everything all right? Roy asked. Roy, Lindsay, I said, my voice steady. There are some things you need to know. Victoria shot me a panicked look. Dad, please, don't I cut her off? Don't do so. Tell them another lie. We moved to the living room. Roy and Lindsay sat on the couch. Victoria and Martin stood like defendants. I positioned myself near the gift bags. Roy, you asked about my flight being delayed? I began. It wasn't. I landed at 2:47 p.m. I called Victoria 35 times. No one answered. They hoped I'd give up and go home. Roy's face darkened. This is unacceptable. You deliberately abandoned him on Christmas, Lindsay said, voice trembling with outrage. I reached for the burgundy bag and pulled out the first envelope. I came with gifts. This check is for $50,000. Martin's is the same. Emma's education fund is $75,000. Victoria's eyes widened. Dad, $175,000, I continued. Money I plan to give out of love. Instead, it will fund my European travels. I placed the envelopes back in my coat. As for my will, which currently leaves my entire estate to Victoria, that's changing tomorrow. Victoria's composure shattered. You don't mean that. We're family. Family doesn't abandon each other on Christmas, I said. Family doesn't mock each other's life work. Family doesn't wait for each other to die. Lindsay touched my arm. Roger, we had no idea. This is heartbreaking. Nearly $3 million, I said, watching Victoria's face. That's what this night cost you. The clock on the mantel ticked like a bomb. I gathered the gift bags. I'll be at the Ritz-Carlton if anyone needs me. Don't. Victoria reached for me. I stepped back. Roy stood. Roger, let us drive you. I've waited long enough, I said. I can find my own way. Outside, the snow had stopped. The world was clean, sharp, unforgiving. I loaded the bags into Roy's waiting SUV. Lindsay had insisted. The drive to downtown was silent except for the heater's whisper. At the Ritz-Carlton, the doorman took my bags without comment. The lobby smelled of cedar and money. I checked in for an indefinite stay. In the suite, I set the gift bags on the desk like evidence. The city sparkled below Denver's lights, stretching toward the mountains like a promise I intended to keep. I opened the burgundy bag, removed the emerald necklace, and held it to the window. The stones caught the chandelier's glow and threw it back in fragments. Tomorrow I would call my lawyer. Tomorrow I would book flights to Rome, Paris, Barcelona. Tomorrow I would begin spending the money I had saved for people who had never deserved it. Tonight I poured a scotch from the minibar and toasted the reflection in the window, a man who had just reclaimed his life. The envelopes lay unopened on the desk. I would decide their fate in the morning. For now I had a city to explore, a future to invent, and a heart that had finally stopped bleeding. Somewhere across town, my daughter was learning that some doors once closed stay locked forever. And I was learning that freedom tastes better than forgiveness. The suite at the Ritz-Carlton was too quiet. Not the silence of an empty house, but the kind that follows a detonation. Everything still ringing, everything still falling. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling window. Denver glittering below like a circuit board someone had forgotten to switch off. Snow had begun again, soft and deliberate, erasing footprints I hadn't yet made. I had not slept. Could not. The gift bags sat in a perfect row on the mahogany desk, their ribbons drooping like wilted party streamers. 6 bags, $175,000 in certified checks, 1 emerald necklace older than the state of Colorado, 1 American Girl doll with curls the exact shade of Emma's. I opened the burgundy bag first. The velvet box inside was cool to the touch, the way Sarah's cheek had been the last time I kissed her. I snapped it open. The emeralds caught the city's glow and threw it back in shards, green fire, green ice. For Victoria, the note inside read, "So you'll always carry your grandmother's courage." I closed the box. The courage was mine now. I poured another scotch, my third or fourth. Numbers had stopped mattering, and carried it to the leather chair by the window. The ice clinked like loose change. I let the memories come because fighting them was like trying to hold back the snow. 1987. The first shop. Aurora, Colorado. I was 29, married 3 years, and terrified. The bank had loaned me $5,000 against a 1965 Ford Falcon that wouldn't start, and a promise I barely believed in myself. Sarah was pregnant with Victoria, glowing even when she threw up in the mornings. We lived in a 1-bedroom above the shop, the smell of motor oil seeping through the floorboards like a lullaby. I opened at 6 a.m., closed at 10 p.m. 6 days a week. Sundays were for inventory and for Sarah's swollen feet on my lap while we watched 60 Minutes on a 12-inch black and white. Victoria arrived in March, screaming like a carburetor backfiring. I held her in grease-stained hands and swore I would build something that would outlast me. By the time she was 5, the shop had a second bay. By 10, a second location. By 15, 6. I missed her first steps because I was under a '78 Chevy pickup. I missed her first word "dada" because I was on the phone with a parts supplier in Detroit. I told myself the overtime was love. Sarah never complained. She brought cookies to the counter every Friday, wore the emerald necklace to every grand opening, laughed when customers called her Mrs. Spark Plug. She kept a ledger of every sacrifice in her head and never once balanced it against me. 1995. The private school decision. Victoria was 11, already taller than her mother, already bored with public school. "You want her to have choices," Sarah said one night, folding tiny socks. Choices cost. I took a second mortgage on the house. I picked up weekend shifts at a competitor just to watch their systems. I learned spreadsheets on a library computer because we couldn't afford one at home. Victoria got in. Uniforms, field trips to D.C., debate club. She came home with report cards full of A's and stories about kids whose parents owned planes. I smiled until my face hurt. 2001. The college fund. Sarah's cancer was stage 3, by the time they found it. I sold the boat. I'd never used the vintage Mustang I'd restored in nights instead of sleeping. I cashed in my 401k. I told Victoria, pick any school. I'll make it work. She picked a private liberal arts college in California. Tuition $32,000 a year. Room and board, another $12,000. Books fees, sorority dues, study abroad in Florence. I opened 2 more locations. I slept in the office on a cot. I learned to smile at bankers while my stomach ulcer bled. Victoria graduated summa cum laude. I flew out for the ceremony, stood in the back row, in a suit 2 sizes too big because I'd lost weight I couldn't afford to lose. She hugged me for exactly 4 seconds, then turned to her friends. 2005. The wedding. Martin was everything I wasn't. Ivy League old money, a smile that belonged in boardrooms. I paid for the rehearsal dinner, the open bar, the string quartet. I gave a speech about hard work and family values. Martin's father toasted Proust. Victoria laughed at the right moments, but her eyes kept drifting to her phone. I danced with her once. She smelled like expensive perfume and distance. 2012. The down payment. They wanted the house in Cherry Hills. Starter home, Victoria called it. $1.2 million. I wrote the $20,000 check for the down payment the same week Sarah's headstone was installed. I told myself it was an investment in their future. I told myself grandchildren needed stability. I told myself a lot of things. 20. Emma. My granddaughter was born on a Tuesday. I flew in, held her for 20 minutes while Victoria scrolled Instagram. She has your eyes, I said. She has Martin's nose, Victoria corrected. I bought the American Girl doll that Christmas. I opened the education fund with $10,000. I added $5,000 every birthday. 2020. The pandemic. The shops survived on PPP loans and prayers. I worked the counter myself when employees got sick. I delivered parts in my pickup at 2 a.m. because hospitals needed ventilators and ventilators needed gaskets. Victoria called once. Dad, can you Venmo me $3,000? The nanny's asking for hazard pay. I sent $5,000. 2023. The sale. Sarah had been gone 8 years. The shops were profitable but hollow without her laugh in the office. I listed them with a broker who wore cologne that cost more than my first car. The offer came in at $2.8 million. I cried in the bathroom of the original Aurora location, the one with the cracked tile and the photo of Sarah holding baby Victoria taped to the wall. I signed. I flew to Denver for Christmas with 6 gift bags and a heart full of second chances. Now, 2:17 a.m. Ritz-Carlton Suite. I set the scotch down untouched. The ice had melted into a pale, expensive puddle. I opened the forest green bag. Martin's scarf was folded with military precision. I had chosen the color to match the BMW he drove, the one I'd co-signed for. I opened the red and gold bag. The doll stared up at me with Emma's eyes. I touched her curls and felt the first tear fall. Not for Victoria, not for Martin. For the little girl who used to fall asleep on my chest while I changed spark plugs with one hand. I lined the 3 envelopes on the desk like playing cards. $50,000, Victoria $50,000, Martin $75,000, Emma's future. I had planned to hand them over with a speech about legacy. Now they looked like ransom notes. I opened my wallet and pulled out the photograph I always carried, Sarah at 30, laughing in the shop, grease smudge on her cheek, Victoria on her hip. I set it beside the envelopes. You warned me, I told her silently. You said I was spoiling her. I didn't listen. I opened the burgundy bag again and removed the letter. 6 pages, single-spaced, written in the dark after nightmares about Sarah's last days. I read the first line aloud. My dearest Victoria, these emeralds have waited 30 years for your neck. My voice cracked. I folded the letter into a paper airplane and sailed it across the room. It landed nose first in the ice bucket. I stood and walked to the window. The city was asleep, but the lights never dimmed. I pressed my forehead to the glass. 30 years. 30 years of 16-hour days, missed birthdays, canceled vacations. 30 years of believing that if I just gave enough, loved enough, sacrificed enough, she would love me back the way I loved her. I had built an empire with my hands and torn it down with my heart. I turned back to the desk. The envelopes gleamed under the lamp like accusations. I picked up Victoria's. The seal was perfect, unbroken. I held it to the light. Through the envelope I could see the Watermark Bank of Colorado. I had chosen that bank because it was where Sarah and I opened our first joint account. I set it down. I picked up Martin's. Same bank, same seal. I had included him because Sarah would have wanted it. Family is family, she used to say. I set it down. I picked up Emma's. The education fund. This one was different. Irrevocable trust, ironclad. I had structured it so Victoria couldn't touch it. A final act of protection for the grandchild who still waved at me on video calls. I set it down. I opened the safe in the closet, placed all 3 envelopes inside and locked it. The click echoed like a judge's gavel. I walked to the bathroom. The mirror showed a man I barely recognized. Eyes red-rimmed, jaw set, shoulders squared. I looked like the man who had opened the first shop at 29. I looked like the man Sarah had believed in. I splashed cold water on my face. The towel smelled like bergamot and money. I returned to the desk and opened the hotel laptop. I typed European travel packages for 1. The screen filled with possibilities: Tuscany in spring, Amalfi Coast, in summer, Swiss Alps, in winter. I bookmarked them all. I opened a new document and titled it, Roger's Rules. No more apologies for who I am. No more buying love. No more waiting. I saved it. I opened the minibar and took out a tiny bottle of champagne. I popped the cork. The fizz sounded like laughter. I raised the bottle to the photograph of Sarah. 2 second chances, I said. The ones we give ourselves. I drank. The bubbles burned going down, but they tasted like freedom. I set the empty bottle beside the gift bags. 6 bags. 6 tombstones for a relationship that had died somewhere between the airport and the driveway. I opened the red and gold bag one last time. I removed the doll and set her on the desk facing the window. Keep watch, kiddo, I told her. Grandpa's got plans. I turned off the lamp. The city's glow was enough. I lay on the bed, fully clothed, shoes and all. The ceiling was high and white and endless. For the first time in 30 years, I fell asleep without a plan for tomorrow. And for the first time in 30 years, I dreamed of open roads instead of balance sheets. The clock on the bedside table read 2:47 a.m., exactly 12 hours since touchdown. I had not closed the curtains. Denver's lights pulsed below like a heartbeat I no longer shared. The gift bags stood in formation on the desk, their ribbons catching stray glints from the city. I had not touched them since locking the envelopes in the safe. My phone lay dark and silent. No missed calls, no apologetic texts, no dad. Where are you? I sat up. The champagne bottle rolled off the duvet and clinked against the ice bucket. The sound was too loud in the hush. I needed air. I needed motion. I needed to see the house again, not through a taxi window, not through a lie, but with my own eyes wide open. I dressed in the same clothes, wool coat, leather shoes, now scuffed from airport floors, the emerald box still in my pocket like a bullet I hadn't decided to fire. I left the gift bags where they were. Let the maid puzzle over the bright abandoned parcels. The night concierge raised an eyebrow when I asked for a taxi at 3:00 a.m. on Christmas night. Going far, sir, Cherry Hills Village, I said. And back. He didn't ask why. The cab was a white Prius engine, humming like a secret. The driver's name was Amir. He had kind eyes and a faint accent, somewhere warm, somewhere far from snow. Bad night, he asked as I slid into the back. Long one, I said. He nodded and pulled away from the hotel's golden awning. The streets were empty except for plows carving slow white paths. Christmas lights blinked from porches like guilty confessions. I gave him the address. He punched it into GPS without comment. We rode in silence for 10 minutes. Snow fell in fat, deliberate flakes, each one erasing the world a little more. I watched it cover the windshield, then the wipers swept it away again. At a red light, Amir glanced in the mirror. "You want heat higher? I'm fine." He adjusted it anyway. I leaned forward. "Amir, you have kids, too. Boy and girl, back in Karachi. You miss them every day." His voice softened. "But I send money. They go to good school. That's love." Yes, I thought of the $75,000 education fund locked in the hotel safe. "Sometimes," I said. "Sometimes it's not enough." He nodded like he understood more than I'd said. We turned onto Victoria Street at 3:22 a.m. The cul-de-sac was a perfect oval of untouched snow. The house sat at the end like a stage set, windows dark, now wreath still glowing on the door, two cars tucked under a blanket of white. Amir idled at the curb. "You want me to wait?" Yes, I stepped out. The cold hit like a slap, but it felt honest. My shoes sank ankle-deep. I walked the driveway slowly, counting steps the way I used to count inventory. The Mercedes was cold to the touch. I brushed snow from the hood, no engine warmth. Same with the BMW. Both had been parked for hours. I stood between them and looked up at the house. Second-floor curtains twitched. A shadow moved Victoria Martin, hard to tell. I raised a hand in a wave that wasn't a wave. The curtain fell back into place. I walked to the front porch. The wreath smelled of pine and plastic. I pressed the doorbell. Once. Twice. Footsteps. The door opened 6 inches. Victoria's face appeared, hair tousled, eyes swollen. She wore the same red sweater from dinner. "Dad." A whisper. "It's 3 in the morning. I know what time it is." She glanced past me at the idling taxi. "You came back. I never left." Martin appeared behind her barefoot pajama pants. "Roger." "This isn't," I cut him off. "I want to see Emma." Victoria hesitated. "She's asleep. Wake her." Martin stepped forward. "It's the middle of the night." I looked at him, really looked. The man who had once asked for my blessing now stood in $1,000 hardwood, guarding a lie. "I flew 13 hours, I said. Waited 13 more. I think I've earned 5 minutes with my granddaughter." Victoria's shoulders sagged. She disappeared upstairs. Martin and I stood in the doorway, snow drifting in around my boots. "You shouldn't have come back," he said quietly. "I shouldn't have come at all." Victoria returned carrying Emma, age 4, blanket trailing thumb in mouth. The child blinked at me, confused but not afraid. "Hi, sweetheart," I said. My voice cracked on the second word. Emma reached out a hand. I took it. Her fingers were warm, trusting. Victoria's eyes filled. "Dad, we can talk tomorrow." "No." I released Emma's hand gently. "We're done talking." I reached into my coat and pulled out the emerald box. Victoria's breath caught. "This was your grandmother's," I said. "She wore it the day she married me, the day Victoria was born, the day she died." I opened the box. The necklace spilled light across the foyer like green fire. Victoria reached for it. I closed the lid. "It's not for you anymore." Martin bristled. "You can't." "I can." I slipped the box back into my pocket. "And I will." Emma started to cry, soft, confused whimpers. Victoria hugged her tighter. I looked at my daughter one last time. "You wanted me gone. Consider it done." I turned and walked back through the snow. Amir had kept the engine running. I slid into the back seat. "Go," I said. He pulled away without a word. In the rearview mirror, the house shrank, first a mansion, then a dollhouse, then a postcard I would never send. Halfway back to the hotel, Amir spoke. "You okay, sir?" I surprised myself by laughing. It came out rusty but real. "I will be." He smiled. "Good. Sometimes the night is for endings, morning is for beginnings." At 3:58 a.m., we pulled under the Ritz-Carlton awning. The doorman took one look at my face and didn't ask questions. In the elevator, I caught my reflection, snow in my hair, eyes bright with something that wasn't grief. Back in the suite, I opened the safe. The 3 envelopes waited like loaded dice. I removed only one Emma's. I slipped it into a new hotel envelope and wrote on the front in block letters, "For Emma Baker. To be opened on her 18th birthday." I added a post-it, "From a grandfather who loved you enough to let you go." I called the concierge. "I need this delivered tomorrow morning," I said. "To the address I'll text you." No note, no return address. "Consider it done, Mr. Baker." I hung up and opened the laptop. The bookmarked travel pages glowed. I clicked Book Now on a one-way ticket to Rome departing December 27th. I added a hotel in Trastevere, small ancient no-gift shop. I added a cooking class in Tuscany, a wine tour in Chianti, a midnight train to Paris. I did not add a return date. At 4:30 a.m. I opened the burgundy gift bag one final time. I removed the letter, the 6-page confession I'd written at 2 a.m. weeks ago. I read it aloud to the empty room. When I reached the part about always being proud of the woman you've become, I stopped. I tore the letter in half, then quarters, then confetti. I opened the window and let the snow carry it away. The pieces swirled into the night like green and white fireflies. I closed the window. I opened the forest green bag and removed Martin's scarf. I folded it neatly and placed it on the desk beside the doll. I opened the red and gold bag and lifted Emma's doll. I set her in the leather chair facing the city. "Keep an eye on things, kiddo," I said. "I'll send postcards." I left the other gift bags exactly where they were, bright, expensive, irrelevant. Let housekeeping deal with them. Let Victoria wonder. I showered, shaved, dressed in the spare clothes I'd packed for a week that would never happen. At 6:00 a.m., the sky over the Rockies turned the color of the emeralds I still carried. I slipped the necklace box into my new suitcase beside a passport, a credit card with no limit, and a heart that had cauterized overnight. I called the concierge again. "Car to the airport, please. International terminal. Name on the reservation, Baker, Roger Baker." I hung up and looked around the suite one last time. The gift bags looked smaller now, like toys a child had outgrown. I left the key on the desk. In the lobby, the Christmas tree still twinkled. I paused beneath it and touched an ornament, a tiny brass car. I smiled. Outside, the car waited. The driver held the door. "Where to, sir?" "Anywhere but here," I said. He grinned. "I know just the place." As we pulled away, the hotel shrank in the mirror, first a palace, then a postcard, then a memory I would not keep. I opened the window. Cold air rushed in, carrying the scent of pine and possibility. I slipped the emerald box from my pocket, opened it, and let the necklace spill into my palm. The stones caught the sunrise and held it. I closed my fist around them. Not for Victoria, not for Martin, not for anyone but the man who had earned the right to wear his own history. I slipped the necklace into my shirt pocket over my heart. The car merged onto the highway. The Rockies rose ahead, ancient, indifferent, eternal. I did not look back. The Prius idled at the curb like a witness. I had not come back to forgive. I had come back to finish it. Amir watched me in the mirror. "You sure, sir?" I nodded once. He killed the engine. I stepped into the snow again, 4:12 a.m. now. The house was dark except for the porch light and the faint blue flicker of a TV in the upstairs window. Someone was awake. Good. I carried nothing this time. No gift bags, no envelopes. Only the emerald box in my coat pocket and the weight of 30 years in my chest. I rang the bell 3 times, short, sharp, deliberate. Footsteps thundered down the stairs. The door flew open. Martin filled the frame, hair wild, eyes bloodshot. "Roger, what the hell?" I stepped past him into the foyer. The air smelled of cold turkey and panic. Victoria appeared at the top of the stairs in a silk robe, clutching her phone like a shield. "Dad?" I closed the door behind me. The click echoed like a gavel. Roy and Lindsay emerged from the living room, wrapped in matching plaid robes. Roy's judicial calm had cracked. Lindsay's face was streaked with tears. Roger Roy said, voice low, "We've been calling you." I turned my phone off. Victoria descended slowly. "We thought you'd gone home." "I am home," I said. "This just isn't it anymore." Martin tried to block the hallway. "This is insane. It's 4 in the morning." I looked at him, really looked. The man who had once asked for my blessing now stood between me and the truth like a bouncer. "Move," I said. He didn't. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the emerald box. I opened it under the chandelier. The necklace blazed like a verdict. Victoria gasped. "Dad!" "This was your grandmother's," I said. "She wore it when she buried her mother, when she married me, when she held you the day you were born, when she died." I let the words hang. Roy's eyes narrowed. Lindsay pressed a hand to her mouth. Victoria reached for the necklace. I closed the lid. "It's not yours anymore." Martin found his voice. "You can't just—" "I can." I turned to Roy and Lindsay. "May I sit?" Roy gestured to the living room. "Please." We moved like a funeral procession. The Christmas tree still twinkled, mocking us. Wrapping paper lay in drifts around the couch. 4 stockings hung from the mantel. Only 4. I took the leather armchair by the fireplace. The others sat, Roy and Lindsay on the couch, Victoria and Martin on opposite ends like strangers. I began. 13 hours at the airport. 35 calls. No answer. No text. No, "Sorry. Just be patient and don't call a taxi." Victoria opened her mouth. I raised a hand. "I'm not done. I told them everything. The family's reuniting while I guarded gift bags like a lost Santa. The sandwich I couldn't taste. The doll with Emma's curls. The envelopes, $175,000 total. The overheard conversation in the kitchen, embarrassing stories. Little auto parts stores waiting for the inheritance." With every sentence, Victoria shrank. Martin stared at the carpet. Roy's jaw tightened until I thought it might crack. When I finished, the silence was absolute. Roy spoke first. "Victoria, Martin, explain." Victoria's voice was small. "We were stressed. Emma had a fever." Both cars are in the driveway," I said. "Cold. Parked since before I landed." Martin tried. "My phone died." 35 calls, I said. "To both phones, straight to voicemail." "That's not a dead battery. That's a choice." Lindsay stood. "You left him at the airport on Christmas Day. Alone. With gifts worth more than most people earn in a year. And you were here eating, drinking, laughing while he wondered if you were dead in a ditch." Victoria started to cry. "We didn't mean—" "You meant every word I said. I heard them." I stood and walked to the Christmas tree. I touched the ornament I'd bought for Emma, a tiny brass car with her name engraved. I unhooked it from the branch. "This was for her stocking," I said. "I had it made in October." I slipped it into my pocket beside the emerald box. Roy's voice was steel. "Martin, you will apologize. Now." Martin looked at his father, then at me. His mouth opened closed. Nothing came out. I saved him the trouble. "Don't. Words are cheap. I've paid enough." Victoria tried again. "Dad, the money." "There is no money." I pulled the 3 torn halves of her $50,000 check from my pocket, the ones I'd ripped in the hotel at 4 a.m., and let them flutter to the coffee table like snow. She stared at the pieces. "You destroyed it." "I destroyed the illusion," I said. "The money's in a new account. My name only." Martin finally spoke. "The will changed at 9 a.m. tomorrow," I said. "My lawyer's already drafting it. The estate goes to 3 charities: cancer research, vocational training, and a scholarship for kids who work in auto shops after school." Victoria lunged for the torn check. "You can't." "I can. And I have." Roy stood. "Enough." He turned to his son. "You will pack a bag. You're staying at the club tonight. Both of you. This house needs space to breathe." Martin opened his mouth to protest. Roy's look shut it. Lindsay walked to me. She took my hands. Roger, we are so sorry. This is not who we raised. I believed her. Victoria was sobbing now. Dad, please, we'll change. You've had 30 years to change, I said. I'm done waiting. I walked to the hallway where the family photos lined the wall. There I was, holding baby Victoria at the first shop opening, teaching her to ride a bike in the driveway, walking her down the aisle. I removed the wedding photo from its frame and slipped it into my coat. For Emma, I said, when she's old enough to ask. I returned to the living room. One last thing. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the brass car ornament. I placed it on the mantel beside the 4 stockings. For the granddaughter I won't see again until she's 18. Tell her the man who gave her this loved her enough to let her go. Victoria collapsed onto the couch, face in her hands. Martin stood frozen. Roy walked me to the door. Roger, he said quietly, you're a better man than this night deserves. I shook his hand. I'm just a man who finally learned his worth. Outside, the snow had stopped. The world was white and clean. Amir waited, engine running. I slid into the back seat. Airport, I said. International terminal. As we pulled away, I watched the house in the mirror. The porch light flicked off. The wreath looked suddenly cheap. At 4:47 a.m., we merged onto I-70. The Rockies loomed ahead, black against a sky turning pearl. Amir glanced back. You want music? Something with a beat, I said. He put on old-school Motown. Marvin Gaye asked what was going on. I smiled for the first time in 24 hours. At the airport, I tipped Amir $100. He tried to refuse. I pressed it into his hand. For your kid's school, I said. He nodded, eyes wet. Safe travels, Mr. Baker. I walked through the automatic doors at 5:15 a.m. The terminal was nearly empty, just cleaners and red-eye travelers. I bought a coffee and a croissant I actually tasted. I found a gate with a flight to Rome departing at 7:40 a.m. I upgraded to first class with the credit card that now had no limits. At 6:30 a.m. I sat by the window and watched the sun rise over the tarmac. The emerald box was in my carry-on, nestled beside a new leather journal and a pen I'd bought in the gift shop. I opened the journal to the first page and wrote December 26th, Day 1 of the rest of my life. Lesson learned. Love is not a transaction. Next stop Rome, then everywhere. I underlined everywhere 3 times. The gate agent called my row. I boarded with nothing but a suitcase, a necklace, and a heart that had finally stopped bleeding. As the plane taxied, I looked out at the Rockies one last time. Thank you, I whispered to the mountains, to Sarah, to the man I used to be. The engines roared. The plane lifted. Denver fell away beneath me, small, bright, already part of the past. I closed my eyes and smiled. The mystery was over. The adventure had just begun. The hallway smelled of cinnamon and betrayal. I had left the living room at 4:35 a.m. with the brass car ornament still warm in my palm, but the weight in my chest demanded one final truth. I told Roy I needed the restroom again. Lindsay nodded, eyes soft with pity. Victoria was curled on the couch, face buried in a throw pillow. Martin stared at the Christmas tree like it might sprout answers. I walked slowly, letting the carpet swallow my footsteps. The bathroom door stood ajar, a sliver of light cutting across the runner. But the voices, low, urgent, venomous, came from the kitchen, not the powder room. I stopped. The house was old enough to carry sound the way a canyon carries wind. Every word drifted through the archway, sharp and clear. Victoria first, her voice stripped of tears, edged with something colder. He'll cool off. He always does. Give him a day, maybe 2. Then we remind him about the will. Martin's reply was a hiss. You said he'd leave if we ignored him long enough. That was the plan. It was the plan, she snapped. But he's stubborn. Like rust you can't scrub off. A dish clinked, someone loading the dishwasher with the precision of rage. Martin again. The inheritance is the only reason we invite him. You know that. My parents think he's quaint, but I'm tired of pretending his grease monkey stories are charming. Victoria laughed short, bitter. Quaint? That's generous. He still smells like motor oil even when he's wearing a $5,000 coat. Did you see the gift bags? Probably another guilt trip wrapped in ribbon. I pressed my back to the wall. The emerald box dug into my ribs like a second heart trying to escape. Martin lowered his voice. How much do you think is left after the sale? 2.8 million minus taxes. Call it 2. Split between us and Emma's trust, still 7 figures each. Enough to never have to smile at his "I started with 5 grand and a dream" speech again. A pause. The faucet ran. Victoria. Once he's gone, really gone. We sell this house, buy and veil. Tell people my father was a self-made entrepreneur. They'll eat it up. No one needs to know he spent 30 years under cars. Martin. We just have to keep him sweet until the end. A few more Christmases. Stroke the ego. Let him think we're proud. Victoria's voice dropped to a whisper I felt in my bones, or we speeded up. He's 62, stress, grief, a weak heart from all those years of fast food, and no sleep. Another disappointment like tonight. The faucet shut off. Silence stretched thick as the snow outside. Martin. You're not serious. I'm tired, Martin. Tired of pretending. Tired of the smell of Pennzoil in my childhood memories. Tired of being the daughter of a man who thinks love is a down payment. A cabinet slammed. Victoria again, softer now, almost tender. Think of Emma. Private schools, Yale, no student loans, no greasy fingerprints on her future. Martin exhaled. We play nice. 1 more year, then nature takes its course. I slid down the wall until I sat on the runner knees to chest. The emerald box pressed harder, a green bruise against my heart. They were not just ashamed, they were counting. Every sacrifice, every missed birthday, every overtime shift, every dollar scraped from the marrow of my life had been tallied in their ledger under future windfall. I closed my eyes. Sarah's voice surfaced gentle but firm from a hospital bed 8 years ago. Promise me you'll keep the emeralds for someone who deserves them. I had thought that meant Victoria. I stood. My legs were steady now, forged in the fire of their words. I walked into the kitchen. They froze mid-motion, Victoria, with a wine glass in one hand, Martin holding a sponge like a weapon. I spoke first. 1 more year. The glass slipped from Victoria's fingers. It shattered on the tile, red wine bleeding across the grout like a crime scene. Martin dropped the sponge. Roger, I raised a hand. Don't! I heard every syllable. Victoria's face cycled through emotions, shock, calculation, fear. You misunderstood. I understood perfectly. I stepped over the broken glass. You want me gone. You want my money. You want my death to be convenient. Martin tried bravado. This is our home, paid for with my down payment, I said. But you're right. It's yours now. Keep it. Keep the lies. Keep the ledger. Victoria found her voice. Dad, we were upset. We didn't mean you meant every word. I pulled the emerald box from my pocket and set it on the island between us. This was for the woman I thought you'd become. She doesn't exist. I opened the box. The necklace spilled light across the marble like a verdict. Victoria reached for it. I closed the lid. Speed it up, I repeated her phrase. Stress. Grief. Another disappointment. Her eyes widened. She realized how much I'd heard. Martin stepped forward. You're twisting? I turned to him. You said nature takes its course. Let me help. I reached into my coat and pulled out the torn halves of both their $50,000 $1,000 checks. I let them flutter into the wine puddle like white sails sinking. Victoria lunged for the pieces. You destroyed. I destroyed the transaction, I said. The love was never real to begin with. Martin's face went gray. The will. Already changed. I lied smoothly. My lawyer has instructions. If I die of anything other than old age in my sleep, the estate is frozen for 10 years. Every penny goes to probate. You'll be grandfathers before you see a dime." It wasn't true yet, but it would be by noon. Victoria sank to her knees in the wine and glass fingers, scrabbling for the soggy check fragments. I looked down at her, at the daughter I had carried on my shoulders through county fairs, whose college tuition I'd paid with blood, and overtime whose wedding I'd funded while Sarah's grave was still fresh. "You wanted me gone," I said. "Consider it done." I walked out of the kitchen. Roy and Lindsay stood in the hallway, faces pale. They had heard everything. Roy's voice was gravel. "Martin, Victoria, pack your things. You're leaving." Martin started to protest. Roy's look silenced him. Lindsay touched my arm. "Roger let us." I shook my head. "You raised him better." "I know that. This ends with me." I walked to the front door. Victoria's voice followed, broken now. "Dad, please." I didn't turn around. Outside, the sky was the color of forged steel. Amir waited, engine running. I slid into the back seat. "Airport," I said. "Fast." He pulled away without a word. In the rearview mirror, the house shrank, first a mansion, then a dollhouse, then nothing. At 5:03 a.m., we hit the highway. The Rockies rose ahead like a promise kept. Amir glanced back. "You want to talk?" "No," I said. "I want to fly." He smiled. "Then let's get you to the stars." I leaned back and closed my eyes. The emerald box was warm against my chest. I was not running. I was arriving. Somewhere over the Atlantic, I would open the box again. I would fasten the necklace around my own neck. I would wear my history, my pain, my triumph. And I would never look back. The Prius flew down I-70 at 5:15 a.m., snow hissing beneath the tires like a warning. Amir kept the speedometer pinned at 80 eyes, flicking between the road and the rearview mirror. "You sure you don't want music?" he asked. "Silence is fine," I said. But silence was impossible. Victoria's whispered "speed it up" echoed in my skull. Martin's nature takes its course, looped like a broken record. The emerald box burned against my heart, a green coal I had carried across decades and continents. I opened the glove compartment, found a pen and a napkin, and began to write. Ledger of a father item: 1, $5,000 bank loan, 1987. Item 2, $200,000 tuition, 2001-2005. Item 3, $20,000 down payment, 2012. Item 4, $175,000 Christmas gifts, 2025. Item 5, 35 unanswered calls. Deck, 25, 2025. Item 6, 1. Daughter who wished me dead. I underlined the last line 3 times. At 5:28 a.m. we reached the airport. Amir pulled to the international curb. I handed him $200 for your kids. He tried to refuse. I closed his fingers around the bills. "Buy them something that doesn't smell like motor oil," I said. He nodded, eyes wet. "Safe travels, Mr. Baker." I walked through the automatic doors at 5:32 a.m. The terminal was a ghost town, just cleaners pushing wide brooms and a lone barista wiping counters. I found the first-class lounge, flashed my new black card, and was waved through. The lounge was warm, dim, smelling of espresso and leather. I claimed a corner table by the window. I opened my phone first time in 12 hours. 47 missed calls, 23 texts, all from Victoria Martin Roy. I opened the most recent from Victoria, time-stamped 5:12 a.m. "Dad, please come back. We can fix this. I love you." I stared at the words until they blurred. I typed, "You taught me what love isn't." "That's enough." I hit send, then blocked the number. I opened my laptop. The Rome ticket glowed on the screen, 7:40 a.m. Departure first-class aisle seat. I added a second leg, Rome to Paris, open return. Then a third, Paris to Barcelona. I did not book a return to Denver. At 6:00 a.m., I called my lawyer Daniel Cho awake because he was always awake. "Roger," he said, voice rough with sleep. "Merry Christmas." "Not anymore," I said. "I need 3 things by noon." "Shoot." 1 new will, everything to 3 charities, cancer research, auto shop scholarships, children's hospital. Name them after Sarah. Silence. Then, done. 2. Emma's education trust irrevocable, locked until she's 25. Victoria and Martin have 0 access, already structured that way. I'll tighten it. 3. Freeze the estate if I die suspiciously. 10-year probate. Make it ironclad. Daniel exhaled. "You're serious. Dead serious. Consider it drafted. I'll courier the signature pages to your hotel by 10 a.m. I won't be at the hotel. I gave him the Rome flight details. FedEx to the Ritz-Carlton Roma. I'll sign in the lobby." "Roger," he said softly. "Are you okay?" "I'm better than I've been in 30 years. I hung up. At 6:15 a.m., I opened the emerald box. The necklace lay on black velvet like a sleeping serpent. I lifted it, felt the weight of 3 generations. I fastened it around my own neck. The clasp clicked shut like a lock. The stones rested against my collarbone, cool at first, then warming to my skin. I looked in the lounge mirror. The man staring back wore a $50,000 necklace and a face that had finally stopped apologizing. At 6:30 a.m., the gate agent called my flight. I boarded with nothing but a carry-on, the necklace, and a heart that had cauterized overnight. I took my seat 1A first-class window. The flight attendant offered champagne. I accepted. As the plane taxied, I opened the napkin ledger again. I added one final line, item 7. Father who learned to fly. I folded the napkin into a paper airplane and tucked it into the seat pocket. At 7:40 a.m., the engines roared. The plane lifted. Denver fell away beneath me, small, bright, already part of the past. I closed my eyes and smiled. The mystery was over. The reckoning had just begun. 8 hours later, 3:40 p.m. Mountain Time, 11:40 p.m. Rome. I stood in the lobby of the Ritz-Carlton Roma, jet-lagged but electric. The courier from Daniel had arrived, signature pages, notary seal, everything perfect. I signed with a flourish. The will was done. The trust was locked. The freeze clause was ironclad. I handed the papers back. Send copies to Roy and Lindsay Baker, Cherry Hills Village. No note. The courier nodded and disappeared into the Roman night. I walked to the concierge desk. "I need 3 things," I said. "Name them, signore." 1. A tailor. "Tomorrow. I want a linen suit the color of the Mediterranean at dusk." Done. 2. A private cooking class in Tuscany. Next week. I want to learn pasta from a nonna who swears in dialect. He grinned. I know the perfect one. 3. A jeweler. Discreet. I want this necklace reset emeralds into a ring, for a man's hand. Something that says I earned this. He made a note. By Friday. I handed him my black card. No limit. He bowed slightly. "Welcome to your new life, Mr. Baker." December 27th, 9:00 a.m. Rome. I woke to church bells and sunlight pouring through shutters. The necklace lay on the nightstand, catching fire from the window. I opened my new journal. Page 1 day 2. Lesson: some doors close so others can open. I dressed jeans, white shirt, the emeralds around my neck like a medal. I walked to the Pantheon. Tourists milled, but I found a corner and sat on the stone steps. I opened my phone, new SIM, new number. I texted Roy, Will, and Trust finalized. Copies en route. Tell Victoria the game is over. Tell Emma I love her. I turned the phone off. I bought a gelato pistachio 2 scoops and ate it while watching the fountain in Piazza della Rotonda. A street musician played Volare. I dropped a €50 note in his case. December 28th. Tuscany. The nonna's name was Juliana. She was 83, missing 2 teeth, and swore like a sailor when I over-kneaded the pasta dough. Piano Americano, you strangle it. I laughed until my sides hurt. We made tagliatelle with wild boar ragu. I burned the first batch. The second was perfect. She pinched my cheek. You cook like a man who's been hungry for years. I didn't correct her. December 31st, Amalfi Coast. I rented a convertible red, of course, and drove the coastal road with the top down. The sea was the color of the suit the tailor had delivered. Dusk blue, hand-stitched, perfect. I stopped in Positano. I bought a ring from a jeweler whose shop smelled of lemon and salt. The emeralds were reset into a thick gold band, simple, masculine, unbreakable. I slipped it on my right hand. It fit like it had always belonged there. At midnight, fireworks exploded over the water. I stood on a terrace alone, champagne in hand. I toasted the sea, to Sarah, to the man I was, to the man I'm becoming. January 15th. Paris. I took a midnight train from Rome. The ring caught the light of the passing towns. In Paris, I walked the Seine at dawn. I bought a beret because why not, and wore it unironically. I ate croissants in cafes where Hemingway once sat. I wrote in my journal day 20. Lesson freedom tastes like butter and possibility. February 1st, Barcelona. I rented an apartment in the Gothic quarter. I learned to order café con leche in Catalan. I danced sardana in Plaça Sant Jaume with strangers who became friends. I sent Emma a postcard every week, no return address, just a brass car sticker on the back. March 1st, Denver via secure email. Daniel forwarded a letter from Roy. Victoria and Martin have separated. She's in therapy. He's at the club. Emma asks about you. The will arrived. They know it's over. We miss you. I did not reply. April 1st, Santorini. I watched the sunset from a whitewashed terrace, the ring flashing in the dying light. I opened my journal to a blank page. Day 96, lesson, Some betrayals are gifts in disguise. I closed the book. I was 63, wealthy, untethered, and for the first time in my life completely gloriously free. The emeralds gleamed on my finger. The past was ash. The future was mine. And somewhere across the ocean, a little girl would one day open an envelope marked, "For Emma," age 18, and find a trust fund, a necklace, and a letter from a grandfather who had loved her enough to let her go. I raised a glass of ouzo to the stars. To second chances, I whispered. The sea answered with a wave. The plane touched down in Rome at 11:40 p.m. local time, December 26th. I stepped onto the jet bridge with nothing but a carry-on, the emerald ring on my right hand, and a heart that had finally stopped bleeding. The terminal smelled of espresso and marble. A porter offered to take my bag. I declined. I wanted to feel every ounce of the new weight I carried, freedom, grief, possibility. Outside, the Roman night was crisp, scented with pine and exhaust. A black Mercedes waited courtesy of the Ritz-Carlton. The driver held a sign, Signore Baker. I slid into the back seat. The leather was cool, the city a blur of ancient stone and neon. I did not look back at the airport. At the hotel, the lobby was a cathedral of gold and silence. The concierge greeted me in perfect English. "Benvenuto, Signore Baker. Your suite is ready. May I take your coat?" I handed it over. The emerald ring caught the chandelier's light and threw it back in shards. In the elevator, I caught my reflection, 62 eyes bright necklace, gone ring in its place. I looked like a man who had survived a shipwreck and found land. The suite overlooked the Spanish Steps. I opened the curtains. Rome spilled below rooftops, domes, the eternal city breathing. I poured a scotch from the minibar. The ice clinked like loose change. I raised the glass to the window. "To Sarah," I said. "To the man I was, to the man I'm becoming." I drank. I opened the safe and removed the 3 envelopes. I had not touched them since the airport. I opened Emma's first. The $75,000 education trust was intact, irrevocable. I added a new note in my own hand. For Emma, age 18. Use this to build the life your parents couldn't imagine. Your grandfather loved you enough to let you go. I sealed it in a hotel envelope and addressed it to Roy and Lindsay with instructions. Deliver on her 18th birthday. No earlier. Victoria's and Martin's envelopes I left unopened. I placed them in the hotel safe with a new note. Return to sender. The transaction is complete. I called the concierge. I need these delivered tomorrow, I said. One to Cherry Hills Village, Colorado. The others returned to the bank. Consider it done, signore. I hung up and opened my journal. Page 1, December 26th, Rome lesson. Some doors close so others can open. I wrote until the pen ran dry. December 27th, 7:00 a.m. I woke to church bells and sunlight pouring through shutters. The city was alive, scooters, voices, the smell of fresh cornetti. I dressed in the linen suit the tailor had delivered overnight, dusk, blue, hand-stitched, perfect. The emerald ring caught the light like a promise. I walked to the Pantheon. The dome rose above me, ancient and indifferent. I sat on the steps and ate a pistachio gelato for breakfast. A street musician played Volare. I dropped a €50 note in his case. I opened my phone, new SIM, new number. I texted Roy Will, and trust finalized. Emma's fund is locked until 25. Tell her I love her. Tell Victoria the game is over. I turned the phone off and December 28th. Tuscany. The nonna's name was Juliana. She was 83, missing 2 teeth, and swore like a sailor when I over-kneaded the pasta dough. Piano Americano. You strangle it. I laughed until my sides hurt. We made tagliatelle with wild boar ragu. I burned the first batch. The second was perfect. She pinched my cheek. You cook like a man who's been hungry for years. I didn't correct her. December 31st, Amalfi Coast. I rented a red convertible and drove the coastal road with the top down. The sea was the color of the suit. I stopped in Positano. I bought a ring box, small black velvet. I placed the emerald ring inside when I wasn't wearing it. At midnight, fireworks exploded over the water. I stood on a terrace alone, champagne in hand. I toasted the sea. To second chances. January 15th, Paris. I took a midnight train from Rome. The ring caught the light of passing towns. In Paris, I walked the Seine at dawn. I bought a beret because, why not, and wore it unironically. I ate croissants in cafes where Hemingway once sat. I wrote in my journal, Day 20. Lesson: freedom tastes like butter and possibility. February 1st, Barcelona. I rented an apartment in the Gothic Quarter. I learned to order café con leche in Catalan. I danced sardana in Plaça Sant Jaume with strangers who became friends. I sent Emma a postcard every week, no return address, just a brass car sticker on the back. March 1st, Santorini. I watched the sunset from a whitewashed terrace. The ring flashed in the dying light. I opened my journal to a blank page. Day 96, lesson. Some betrayals are gifts in disguise. I closed the book. April 1st, Denver via secure email. Daniel forwarded a letter from Roy. Victoria and Martin have separated. She's in therapy. He's at the club. Emma asks about you. The will arrived. They know it's over. We miss you. I did not reply. May 1st, Cape Town. I stood on Table Mountain at sunrise. The city spread below like a promise. I opened my journal to the final page. Day 126. Lesson. The world is wide and I am small, and that is enough. I closed the book and slipped it into my backpack. I was 63, wealthy, untethered, and for the first time in my life, completely gloriously free. The emerald ring gleamed on my finger. The past was ash. The future was mine. And somewhere across the ocean, a little girl would one day open an envelope marked, For Emma, age 18, and find a trust fund, a ring and a letter from a grandfather who had loved her enough to let her go. I raised a glass of Cape wine to the sunrise. To second chances, I whispered. The mountain answered with wind.